Okay, so I finished Sonoflord a couple days ago, and I'm still thinking about that ending. It really gets under your skin. It makes you question everything. So we are going to unpack this psychological thriller today, Jasper Romo's Sonoflord. It's kind of like if Dexter met Romeo and Juliet, but set in modern-day England and France.
Interesting setting, actually. It's pretty fascinating how the author juxtaposes these romantic places with this dark plot. It really adds to that sense of unease, you know?
Right. Like the scenery is just a facade. It's like there's this hidden darkness right under the surface. Speaking of facades, let's talk about Nathan. Nathan Sonoflord.
Ah, Nathan. He's like the perfect boyfriend, you know. Charming, helpful, almost too good to be true, and that's exactly the point. As the story unfolds, you realize he's carefully crafted this persona, this mask, to hide his true nature. He's a serial killer, a very calculated serial killer.
I love this genre, and I feel like the author's setting us up from the very beginning, but it's so subtle, you are totally blindsided when the truth is revealed.
Exactly. That's what makes him so compelling. He embodies this chilling reality. We create these perfect versions of ourselves, hiding our darkest impulses. It begs the question, how well can we truly know anyone, even the people closest to us?
Especially when his boyfriend studies criminal justice.
Yeah.
Thomas Cantor. Talk about irony.
Yeah.
This guy is drawn to solving crimes, but is terrified of death and violence.
Yeah. That internal conflict in Thomas is one of the most captivating parts of the story.
Right.
He's fascinated by the darkness, but he's repulsed by it.
And all come to a head when he finds out about Nathan. He finds bloodstains in his study. Can you imagine?
Oh, yeah. That's a pivotal moment. Thomas has to confront everything he's been feeling. He's been in denial. He's been choosing to only see the good in Nathan, ignoring all the red flags.
Which leads us to complicity. How much are we all guilty of turning a blind eye? Especially when it comes to people we love.
It's a tough question. It really makes you think, do we only see what we want to see, even when something's right there in front of us?
And as Thomas is dealing with this, we see Nathan becoming more erratic, more violent. That scene with Andrew, the teenage boy he holds captive, it's clear Nathan is spiraling.
Yeah, he's consumed by guilt and the need for power. It's like an addiction.
And then we learn about Nathan's father, Samuel Sonoflord. Turns out he was a murderer too. Is it nature or nurture? Are we all just destined to follow our parents?
Well, the novel doesn't really give us an easy answer. It's this complex interplay between genetics, upbringing, and personal choice, which is what makes it so disturbing. Is Nathan a product of his environment, or is he choosing this path?
It's like the author is challenging our assumptions about good and evil. Are we shaped by our past, or are we in control of our own destiny?
And that question of destiny leads us to the climax.
Part of me thinks he felt remorse, but maybe it was just the easy way out.
Yeah, it's intentionally ambiguous. It makes you think about morality. Is redemption even possible in this situation?
And of course, we can't forget about Thomas. He's left to rebuild his life. It highlights the long and painful process of healing from trauma.
Definitely. Trauma is messy. It's ongoing. There's no quick fix. Author layers these moments of tenderness with this knowledge of Nathan's horrific acts. It creates this dissonance for the reader.
Can love even exist with that kind of darkness? When does love become an excuse for complicity?
It applies to all of us. How often do we ignore red flags in our own relationships? Do we choose to see the best in people, even when they give us every reason not to?
Exactly. This story, it's complex. It explores love, guilt, violence. It's a psychological thriller. But there's another element I want to discuss.
Oh, yeah, the mirrors. They're brilliant. They reflect the broken minds of the characters, both literally and figuratively. Like when Thomas sees himself in the mirror after he's beaten, he doesn't even recognize himself. That's how much the trauma's changed him.
Right.
And then there's Nathan, staring into the mirror before each murder.
Chilling. Like he's trying to convince himself he's not a monster, but the reflection tells a different story. And then Nathan calls Thomas his mirror. What's interesting is
he needs to see himself reflected in Thomas, a distorted version of himself, to justify what he's doing. And Thomas, blinded by love, plays along.
Yeah, but it can also be incredibly dangerous.
Speaking of dangerous, that scene with the knife.
Oh my gosh, that scene, the tension, the way the danger just keeps escalating.
It's like a game, cat and mouse. Nathan's pushing Thomas, testing him, seeing how far he can go.
Right, and the way he describes it, Nathan's movements, his voice, his eyes, is terrifying. So realistic. But I also sense vulnerability. Like Nathan's showing us something he doesn't want us to see, something he's afraid of.
That's what makes him so compelling. He's not just a villain. He's complex, deeply flawed, capable of love, and cruelty.
And that complexity is reflected in his relationship with Thomas. There are these moments of tenderness. You almost forget about the darkness.
Almost. It makes the tragedy even worse. You see the potential for something real, for love, but it's all destroyed.
And Thomas, he's so loyal. Even after everything, it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking and frustrating. You want to tell him to run,
Right.
but you also get why he stays. He thinks he can save Nathan.
I think there's a message there. Love can blind us. We have to know the difference between healthy love and obsession.
Absolutely. Sonoflord is a warning. We need to see those red flags. We need to set boundaries. As thriller fans, we've probably seen this in other stories too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's a classic dilemma.
Which is probably why this book is so powerful. It shows us that we all have that potential for good and for evil. The choices we make have consequences.
And speaking of choices, when Thomas finds out about Nathan's father, it shatters his denial.
It's a turning point. That scene in Nathan's childhood home, the journal, it's so important. The house itself, dark, dusty, full of secrets.
Like a physical representation of their past.
Yeah.
And that sense of decay. It's like it spreads to Nathan and Thomas.
Haunted by their actions.
Consumed by darkness.
They can't escape. It's tragic and dangerous.
Makes you wonder, did Nathan ever truly love Thomas? Or was he just using him?
That's the question, isn't it? That's what makes this book so unsettling. It makes you face the dark side of humanity, the ways love can be twisted.
Are you seeing people clearly? Or are you just choosing to see what you want to see?
I think that's a good takeaway from any book, really. Self-awareness, it's important.
Absolutely. Thomas is so conflicted, disgusted, but drawn to Nathan.
Yeah. He's suffering from PTSD. His judgment is clouded.
And Nathan, he twists everything. Makes Thomas feel responsible.
Classic gaslighting. Abusers use it all the time to control their victims.
And it works on Thomas. He's already consumed by guilt.
He's vulnerable to Nathan's manipulation.
This book does such a good job of showing how these relationships work. The isolation, the erosion of self-esteem.
It's powerful.
Another thing that struck me, the author doesn't shy away from the brutality, but he does it in a way that's both horrifying and beautiful.
Absolutely. There's this poetic quality to it, even the gruesome parts. The contrast makes you feel uneasy.
It's not just the setting that reflects the characters. It's the writing style, too. This blend of lyrical descriptions with these moments of violence.
Makes you confront the duality of human nature.
Exactly.
It's not just the thriller.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that. It makes you think about the human condition. It makes you think, how far would you go to protect someone you love, even if it meant betraying your own values?
I'm curious, what did you think of that very last scene? Nathan says, "I'm still in love with you." Was he being sincere? Or was it another manipulation?
I don't know. It's up to the reader to decide. It shows how abuse works. Even when you think you're free, it can still haunt you. Sonoflord is a haunting book. It makes you think about yourself, about the world.
It reminds us that sometimes the people we're closest to are hiding the darkest secrets.
And those secrets
Yeah.
can be devastating. Makes you think about desire, about love and obsession, the dangers of impulses.
It all comes back to responsibility. Are we responsible for our actions, even when driven by urges or trauma?
It's a question the book asks over and over, not just about Nathan, but Thomas too.
And it's not just physical violence. There's emotional manipulation, psychological abuse.
Yeah.
Nathan gaslights Thomas constantly. You love me, so you have to accept all of me, even the darkness.
And Thomas believes him.
It's heartbreaking. No one is who they seem.
It creates this tension, this feeling that something's wrong. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters are closer than we think.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
It's been great.
Yeah.
We've just scratched the surface. This book deserves to be read and reread.
Absolutely.
Moss?
I encourage all of you listening, pick up a copy. But be warned, it's a journey into darkness, one you won't soon forget.
And let us know what you think. Until next time.
Keep exploring
Keep questioning.
and keep diving deep.